This year marks the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Mongolia, when the Mongolian and Chinese presidents held talks in April 2019. They agreed to organize a series of cultural and people-to-people events to commemorate the anniversary. Accordingly, the opening ceremony of a series of cultural events was kicked off in Ulaanbaatar on September 10, 2019. The event was co-organized by the Mongolian Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Sports, China's General Administration of Press and Publication, and Mongolian National Broadcaster. It's said that people-to-people relations are the foundation for relations between the two nations. People-to-people relations are a form of human cooperation. The importance of people-to-people relations is to understand and learn about each other's cultures. How can one understand the unique culture of another nation? One of the best ways to understand other cultures is to read books. If you want to get a better understanding of a nation, you should read the works of literature of that nation. If you want to know about China, you need to read Chinese literature. Our translators and researchers play an important role in literary translation. In recent years, several good translations have been published in Mongolia. Our people can get a better understanding of China through these books. I think that books are key to learning the secrets of China's rapid development.
Ер нь бол Монгол Хятадын харилцаа маш өргөн хүрээтэй болж байна.
Relations and cooperation between China and Mongolia are developing in every sector. In particular, cultural relations have been expanding. We are organizing a series of cultural events to mark the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Mongolian National Broadcaster supports initiatives for book exchange and the translations of classic books from Chinese to Mongolian and vice versa.
Соёлын солилцооны бодлогын хүрээлэн байгуулах цаг болсон байна гэж бид бодож байгаа.
One of the cultural events is the Mongolia-China joint book exhibition. More than 1,000 books are on display for the 3-day exhibition that was open to the public. The exhibition was organized by Mongolian National Broadcaster, the National Library of Mongolia, and the Chinese Cultural Translation and Studies Support Network. More than 10 publishing and printing companies presented their publications for the exhibition. Unlike other exhibitions, this book exhibition showcases not only translated Chinese literary works, but also Mongolian literary works. You can see both Chinese and Mongolian literary works. I hope that, first of all, we can mutually recognize the great literary works of the two countries. Mongolia is a country with a great history and tradition behind its writing systems. Mongolians have used more than 10 scripts throughout their history, both created and borrowed. In addition, the country has a long history of translations of both Asian and Western literature. Since ancient times, Mongolians have learned about sedentary agriculture and cultures through ancient classic Chinese novels.
Дэлхийн олон хэлнээс монгол хэлээр орчуулсан ном бичиг
Mongolians used to translate literary works from multiple languages. Among them, translations from Chinese seemed to hold great significance. Mongolia has a rich tradition of Chinese literature translation, which originated at an earlier time. The recorded history of translating Chinese literature to Mongolia dates back to the 14th century. For example, there is a historical record of the prominent Mongolian translator Timur translating the famous Achlatnom, or Classic of Filial Piety, a classic Confucian treatise, in 1307, and presenting the translation to Gaishang Kudu Khan of the Great Yang Dynasty. The emperor made a decree that this book should be read by all, from the nobles to commoners. This is the oldest written evidence. We know from many oral histories that many books were translated to Mongolian at an earlier time. This written evidence that Mongolians used to translate Chinese literature confirms that we have a long history and tradition of Chinese book translation.
орчуулах хятаднээс монгол хэлээр орчуулсан бичиг дурсгалын зүйл ямар өрн эртний уламжлалтай байгааг эндээс харагдаж байгаа юм л да.
Манжид эзэсний дараа бодвол 1700-аад он хүртэл ерөөсөө
When Mongolia was under the control of the Manchu-led Qing dynasty, Mongolian access to Chinese culture was limited. It was useful in some ways. Manchu leaders had a policy of keeping the Mongolians and Chinese separate. It served as an obstacle preventing Chinese cultural diffusion in Mongolia, a nation with a small population. At that time, Mongolians had the chance to read books in the Manchu language related to governance and management, and culture and lifestyle in the Ming dynasty. However, Mongolians had no access to Chinese literature. After the 1800s, the Qing government began to struggle to retain power due to different factors, including the Opium War in the 1840s. After that, Mongolians had the chance to translate Chinese literature to Mongolian. At that time, 4 great Chinese classical novels were translated to Mongolian. This coincided with the peak time for the publication of classical Mongolian literature.
дарах сайт хийгээ явчихаар сүүлдээ одоо бараг дуусчихлээ.
Mongolians didn't only translate Chinese literature to Mongolian. During the last century, the translation of Mongolian literature to Chinese was well underway, greatly contributing to the introduction of modern Mongolian literature to Chinese readers.
After the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949, China began to translate foreign literature to Chinese to strengthen its foreign relations and cooperation. During that time, from the 1950s to the mid-1980s, Mongolian literary works were widely translated to Chinese. Mongolian literature was even translated from Russian to Chinese. Literary works by Mongolian writers, including well-known authors such as Natsugdorj, Rinching, and Lodadamp, were translated.
ер нь бол их олон хүний бүтээлүүдийг бол орчуулсан байдаг энэ үед.
中蒙两国是友好邻邦，有着非常
Mongolia and China are friendly neighbors. We have a long history of relations and cultural exchange. Unfortunately, such mutual relations and understanding have declined in the past century. Chinese readers don't know about Mongolian literature or writers. Also, many modern Chinese works of literature aren't readily available to Mongolian readers. Our two countries have a long tradition of historical relations. Therefore, we should make efforts to introduce the best literary works by writers of the two countries to readers both in China and Mongolia. Taking advantage of the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Mongolia, we need to introduce more and more literary works to the book markets in each country and connect with the readers through our libraries.
走进彼此国家读者的书桌。
ер нь хятадын соёлын тухай ярих юм бол күнзийн тухай ярих хэрэгтэй болдог.
To talk about Chinese culture, you need to talk about Confucius. If you need to talk about the mindset of the Chinese people, you have to talk about Confucian thought or Confucianism. To talk about Confucius, you need to talk about his books in China. China and Confucius are inseparable. Therefore, we must study Confucianism. All the teachings of Confucius, an ancient Chinese philosopher, to know about China, the mindset of the Chinese people, and the philosophy and way of life of the Chinese people. Accordingly, I am translating books by Confucius. I translated the 4 books, classic Chinese texts illustrating the core values and beliefs of Confucianism. I hope that they can be a good resource for learning about China, particularly ancient Chinese philosophy and tradition. The 4 books are comprised of Doctrine of the Mean, Great Learning, Mencius, and Analects.
Хэв дундээ болсон их суртахуй тэгээд Мэнжийн сургаалуудаа багтдаг юм учиртай байна тийм.
The Chinese Culture Translation and Study Support Network recently surveyed Mongolian readers on their favorite Chinese books and announced the top 10. Along with classical Chinese literary works, some modern literature like Wolf Totem by Jiang Rong were also included. This proves that Mongolian readers love to read Chinese literature.
Ер нь би нэг бодол байт юм л да. Болж өгөө нэг Азийн сонгодог уран зохиолын сурал гаргачих гэсэн ингээд.
I dreamed of translating Asian classics and printing them in a series. Then I chose Chinese literature. The core of classical Chinese literature is 4 novels: Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Water Margin, Journey to the West, and Dream of the Red Chamber. I translated and published 3 of them. Now I'm translating the remaining one, Dream of the Red Chamber. As I said at today's event, I translated Wolf Totem in 26 days, although it is a big novel with difficult words and phrases. However, it took 5 years to produce Romance of the Three Kingdoms, although I was translating it, comparing it to an old Mongolian version. One reason was because there were 800 to 1,000 Chinese versions of these novels printed, Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Dream of the Red Chamber, using both lithographic and xylographic techniques. It meant that I couldn't choose the same version. Also, every translation is different. There were so many old Mongolian translations, roughly 30 to 40. There are 4 translations of Romance of the Three Kingdoms in modern Mongolian. The quality of the translations is different. I intend to produce a classic version that can be widely accepted.
Улаасрын зүүдийн тэнгид тэтгсэн хааны чулуун борын хувьд хамгийн сайн гэдэг. Тэгсэн мөртлөө дундаа хамгийн сайн хувьд ихэд чинь заавал 1% алдагдaltaй байдаг гэж. Алдаа мадагтай байдаг.
Among the series of cultural events being held to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and China, one significant event was the screening of China's political documentary and the publication of The Governance of China, a book written by Chinese President Xi Jinping, formally launched in Mongolia. This year marks the 70th anniversary of Mongolia and China diplomatic ties. This year is also the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. In connection to the anniversary, many books are being published in both Mongolia and China. Many new and good books with many ceremonies for the launch of new books. Today's book exhibition is one of a series of cultural events. Many significant books were translated to Mongolian this year. One notable book is The Governance of China, written by Chinese President Xi Jinping. It is now becoming very popular and has been translated into more than 20 languages. Now the book is one of Mongolia's bestsellers. A team of translators translated this book to Mongolian.
시진핑 테러스에 засах тухай номын 1-р байтын нээлт болж өнгөрсөн.
In the past decade, Mongolian translators, researchers and writers have translated a variety of literary works from Mongolian to foreign languages, including Chinese. For instance, the Mongolian State University of Education compiled 5 volumes of Mongolian writers published in Chinese for the 70th anniversary of Mongolia-China ties.
We published books in Chinese on traditional Mongolian culture and customs and legends about Mongolian folk instruments. They are researched works and textbooks which can be used for studies. We also translated literary compilations that were first translated to traditional Chinese in the 1950s. For example, a compilation of literary works by the great writer Natsugdurch in honor of the 110th anniversary of his birth. There are 3 Chinese versions of the famous poem My Native Land by Natsugdurch. There are also 3 versions of his literary works Old Time Boy and The Beauty of the Countryside. All of them are included in the compilation. My School, a literary work by the prominent writer Lotte Damp, was published in both traditional and simplified Chinese. Literary works by the well-known author Damden Surung were published in both Mongolian and Chinese in same compilation for the 110th anniversary of his birth. Also, the Damerons by Tarwa and the collected works of Singye were compiled in a volume. In total, our university has published 5 volumes in Chinese for the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and China. We will continue this work.
Зэрэгцүүлж гаргасан байгаа. Цаашдаа бол энэ үргэлжлээд явах юм ба.
Books are an important means of communication. The organizers said that the Mongolia-China book exhibition is expected to contribute to the further development of cultural exchanges between the 2 countries. A wide range of readers came to today's book exhibition. They were seniors and children. While watching children who were interested in Chinese books, I realized that the translation of classic Chinese and Mongolian literary works would go smoothly and be successful. More than 1,000 books were on display in the exhibition. Indeed, the exhibition could be the foundation of a bridge for people-to-people relations and has opened a communication channel. We found out what future trends are in people-to-people relations.
Одоо ерөн зүгээр аливаа том үндэстэн хүчрэгжин гарч ирэхдээ бол зайлшгүй өөрийнхөө соёлын бүтээгдэхүүнийг гадагшаа.
It is a common practice for any emerging powerful nation to influence the cultures of other nations. For example, parallel to the economic and social developments of the USA, Japan and France, there were big explosions of culture and art. Great culture and art products were created and exported to foreign markets. Chinese President Xi Jinping raised a 3-point proposal which could be useful to our country at the Conference on Dialogue of Asian Civilizations. He said that China is ready to launch initiatives with other countries to translate Asian classics, both from and to Chinese, and promote film and TV exchange and cooperation in Asia, in addition to working with other countries to promote tourism in Asia.
Одоо хэтийн жуулчлалыг татдаг, тийм ээ. Одоо ноол уран эдлээ санзаараа явуулцдаг, халуун тоогоо хэдүүлцдэг ийм энгийн байх болох нь ч тийм ээ.
文明的交流是双向的。
Cultural exchanges are bilateral relations. If these relations are equal, they continue for a long time, and countries can get a better understanding of one another and will get to know each other well. The initiative presented by Chinese President Xi Jinping to translate Asian classics from and to Chinese is a good opportunity for Asian countries, especially friendly neighbors like China and Mongolia. So far, we are working to select classic Mongolian literary works in collaborating with Mongolian writers, translators, and sinologists. Also, we are working with Chinese experts to select Chinese classics for translation.
专家进行了中国作品的选择。
Дан ганц одоо хятадаас монгол руу орчуулахаас илүүтэйгээр бас Монголынхаа соёл уламжлал.
Not only do we translate from Chinese, but we also translate Mongolian literary works and books on Mongolian customs to Chinese. This will be useful for helping our youth to express and present their thoughts on our cultural heritage freely in Chinese. Also, it will help Chinese people get more familiar with Mongolia's literature, culture, philosophy, and way of life.
Тэгээд нөгөө талаас ярих бас олон асуудлууд байгаа л да.
Тунгалаг тамирыг орчуулах хэрэгтэй. Энэ бол одоо манай Монголын ард түмний хамгийн дээдлэг зуны шилдэг армаа юм аа.
As you know, River Tamir, a novel by Lodadam, is the most beloved novel among Mongolian readers, and it was declared the best Mongolian novel of the 20th century. As a translator who has dedicated my life to translation, I have just signed a contract to translate this famous novel and to introduce this literary work to the Chinese book market. I'm happy. I hope that Chinese readers will enjoy reading River Tamir.
Удахгүй бол тунгалаг тамирыг хятадын уншигчид их дуртай хүлээн авах байхаа гэж найдаж байна.
我们在未来的一段时间将会推动在蒙古。
We intend to establish a special council in Mongolia soon. To establish it, we will cooperate with Mongolian professional organizations, including the National Library of Mongolia, the Mongolian Writers' Union, the Mongolian Office of the International Board on Books for Young People, and the National University of Mongolia. We will advance this classic literary works translation project with support from concerned agencies of the government of Mongolia. I hope that we can successfully implement this project with the joint effort of the governments of the two countries, specialists and people. I hope that we can select great literary works together, which can attract the interest of our customers in the long run and which can become best-selling books.
长期的流传和畅销的作品。
манай хоёр улс бол одоо эрэг тэгш айл хөрш одоо юм хоёр орон байна. Бас
Mongolia and China are neighboring countries that treat each other as equals. These friendly relations of good neighbors is strengthening. Those who work in our literary and publishing sector, as well as the readers, are playing a great role in promoting this relationship. Obviously, this relationship will continue to grow and get stronger.
энэ харилцаас ааш улам мөнзгэрийн хөгжих нь дамжихгүй гэж ингэж бодож байна да.
我一直有一个预期，蒙古会未来发展。
I'm confident that Mongolia will prosper in the future, and Mongolia's economy will continue to grow because Mongolia is rich in natural resources, while its population is small. I hope that Mongolian economic growth will speed up to help it become a powerful country in Asia, in that traditional and friendly relations between China and Mongolia will continue to strengthen based on the mutual understanding agreed upon by our two presidents. We are looking forward to our two nations developing together and becoming prosperous and rich countries.
我们期待的中蒙共同富裕、共同繁荣、共同发展的那一刻。